Hi, so for my image, I chose Migrant Mother, which was a photo taken by Dorothea Lange in 1936 during the Great Depression. The photograph here shows a mother with her two children. She's looking off to the side with a very worried, serious expression, while her two other children's faces are completely turned away from the camera, and her third one, hidden down here, is pretty much blocked off by an object. The mother is the main focus of the photograph, and her expression makes you wonder what she could have been thinking about in that moment. Lang took this photograph while documenting Americans who were struggling during the Great Depression. Many families were facing unemployment, poverty, and just overall uncertainty. I chose this image because I talked about it in my history class this year when we were learning about the Great Depression and how photographs like this one help show people what others were experiencing. Because of that, I already had some background knowledge about this image, but I wanted to think about it from a more personal perspective for this assignment. When I look at this photograph, my first reaction is sadness. The mother's expression is what stands out to me the most. She doesn't look directly at the camera, but instead looks off in the distance, like she's thinking about what's going to happen next. If she can feed her children that night, if she has a job, if she has a home. I think that makes the photograph more emotional because we don't actually know what she was thinking, so we naturally create our own story. The children's faces also affect my reaction. Since we can't see their expressions, I find myself wondering what they were feeling and why they were leaning on their mother. The black and white photograph also makes the image feel more serious and adds to the feeling of uncertainty. If this image was taken in color, I think my reaction would have been much different. My own background influences how I've seen the photographs too. Since I've learned about the Great Depression in school, I automatically connect this image with poverty and the struggles that families face during this time. At the same time, I haven't experienced what this one was experiencing, so I have to remember that I can feel sympathy without completely understanding her situation. I think the photograph could create very different emotions depending on who's looking at it. For example, a historian might see more than just a worried mother. They might immediately connect it to just the Great Depression, unemployment, poverty, just what millions of Americans were going through. They might feel sadness, but they could also feel that the photograph is historically important because it has such a strong symbol of the time period. Someone seeing this photograph for the first time with no background knowledge might react differently. They might not know anything about the Great Depression or why the family was struggling. Instead, they might simply see a mother who looks concerned about her children. They could feel sympathy, curiosity, or even anxiety because they don't know what happened before or after the photo was taken. This shows how our previous knowledge changes perspective. The photograph itself stays exactly the same, but two people can look at it and take it away completely different meanings. If I were presenting this image to an audience, I would make sure to give them historical context. I would explain that it was taken during the Great Depression when many families were dealing with unemployment and poverty. I'd also explain that Lang took hundreds of photos documenting people who were experiencing hardships like this one. I think the context would make the audience feel differently. Without it, someone might just see a sad mother and her children. After learning the history behind it, they might realize that the photograph represents a much larger, struggling group of millions that were experiencing this. However, I would also remind the audience that we don't know the entire story behind the specific moment. There could be something more going on, but obviously it was taken during the Great Depression, which had a significant toll on families during this time. For my personal reflection, I can think of situations where I misunderstood someone's actions because I was only looking at it from my perspective. There have been countless times where I thought friends were being different or acting distant toward me, and I immediately assumed that they were annoyed at me or that I had something wrong. Obviously, later I found out that that person might have just had a bad day, they've been stressed or tired or just dealing with something completely unrelated. The situation wasn't about me at all. Looking back, I could have handled the situations better by asking what was going on instead of making assumptions and keeping to myself. I could have just asked, hey, is everything okay? Which would have given the person a chance to explain their perspective before I reacted. Because of that, one strategy I want to use in the future is asking clarifying questions before reacting. If someone's behavior bothers me, I want to remind myself that I don't automatically know what they are acting and why. Asking a question first can help me understand their perspective instead of creating a story in my head. For my creative element, I wanted to imagine the photograph from a perspective of one of the children. If I were one of these children, I wouldn't know that this photograph was ever going to become famous of me or represent the Great Depression. I probably just seen my mom and noticed that she was worried, might have not even noticed the camera at all. I may not understand why she was worried or what was happening around us. Thinking about this changes the way I see the photograph. Instead of just seeing a famous historical image I've studied in class, I see it as a moment of a real family who is experiencing real things. Overall, I think Migrant Mother shows how much perspective can affect our emotions and interpretations. A historian, someone seeing the photo for a first time, or even someone inside the photograph can all see something different. The biggest thing I've taken away from this assignment is that we don't always have the full story. Whether we're looking at a historical photograph or dealing with something in our own lives, it's easy to make assumptions based on what only we can see. Taking a moment to consider another person's perspective can completely change how we understand a situation. Finally, I just wanted to thank you for this course, this final assignment. I've really enjoyed thinking and learning about the topics and perspectives that we've connected to real life. I know it's something that I'll definitely be able to use outside of school as I apply to colleges, and it's really solidified my idea of going down the business route. Thank you for a great course and for listening for my presentation. Bye.